So, and God seems also to love you all, because when we phoned to Sweden
Where
to
God lives.
capture Polar, asking Lars to come over to tell us about his fabulous software he will show you just now, he said, yes, I come. So now Lars will tell you about his great software, which I really love. I enjoy the software very much, Lars.
Thank
So
you very
give
much.
us a glimpse what this is.
Yes. Can you hear me? Excellent. So, my name is Lars. That's like Ars with an L. I'm from Sweden, and I work with a company called Capture. We're a very small company that does only one thing, and that's a software called Capture. I've got two colleagues, Vangelis and Lasse, so we're three people in the company. And we've been working on this product for some 15, 16 years. So we've been in the business for a very long time, but we've only been expanding seriously the past 5, 6 years. So what we believe in is creating a software for you, for the lighting people primarily, and the video people, to help you design a show, to prepare for a show, to promote your design, and to get you in a state for the show where you feel it's easier to get the show done. And we want you to do this using our software, and we want the software to be so easy to use that it was just as easy as if you were using the real stuff, except you wouldn't have to move anything or actually pull any cables or rig any trussing. So you just do it with your computer and a cup of coffee. Our slogan is just visualize it. That's how easy we want it to be. So, quick poll. How many in here use any kind of design visualizer software, Excel not included? There's a few hands. Does anyone use Capture? 2 hands, 3 hands, 3.5. That's good. The rest of you, do you find yourself using pens and papers, maybe napkins? That's harder to confess, but it does happen. Yeah. So, our software is a design software for lighting and video, mainly. Now, before you can start working with lighting and video, obviously you need something to light. You need a stage, a set, maybe some trussing, and possibly some actors. They're optional. So the first part that you need to do in the software is draw some kind of environment. And in Capture, you do this mostly using drag and drop, which means it's not a traditional design software where you would draw lines that you would connect to each other and then you would extrude them like you do in AutoCAD, for instance. So Capture is more, take this box, put it here, let's grab a stage, let's throw in a truss. So it's a lot more basic than the traditional CAD software that you might find out there. This also means that once you've put a box on stage, if 2 hours later you decide the box was too small, you can easily just change the size of the box and you don't have to start drawing lines again all over. If that doesn't get you all the way, if you have something more complex, like a sculpture of the Statue of Liberty, you don't want to draw that using boxes. So at that point, you can actually import drawings from other softwares using 3ds, OBJ, or DWG files. So if there is a set designer that likes to work in Cinema 4D, AutoCAD, SketchUp, whatever, you can easily bring these designs into Capture. But Capture is not the software where you draw complicated stages. Once you've got something like a stage and environment in Capture, it's time to start working with the lighting. So the thing we believe in mostly is that if it's easy to put a light in the computer and move it around and see what happens right away, that really stimulates the creativity and gives you the tool to test stuff around. Because if it takes 15 minutes to test something, then you might be too bored to do it. So it needs to be quick. The benefit of doing this in a computer is that once you have placed all the fixtures, then for free, in a sense, you also get the paperwork. Because Capture knows the position of everything, so it can help you in doing the paperwork if you need to create a plot. Now, in order to do some pre-programming with the console, you need to connect it to that. So normally you would use DMX of some kind, and you need to get that DMX into Capture. And Capture is one of the most connectable visualizers on the market. I think it is the most connectable visualizer, actually. So we support a number of protocols. And using ArtNet and CITP, for instance, that gets you very, very far. So emulation, for instance, you could connect using ArtNet. Or any of the other consoles mentioned earlier today, like MA, Avolites, and the Hog as well. So apart from the lighting, what's become apparent over the past years is that when you start doing advanced texture mapping, lots of video walls and stuff like that, it can also be useful to visualize that and play around with it a bit in the computer environment as well. So what you can do in Capture is you can take an image or a video and basically put it on anything. You could throw it on the floor in here, you could put a video on the wall without even caring about how it got there, just to see what it would look like. You could, of course, do that by actually putting LED panels on the floor. You could rig a projector to the ceiling and put a projection surface on the wall. Of course, you can do that too. But the important thing is that it lets you do stuff in many different ways, and sometimes ways that wouldn't even be possible in reality because you're just trying out an idea. Or sometimes you want to take a shortcut because you know those LED tiles are going to work. So you don't care about connecting 50 LED tiles. You just put a box there and put the video on it. So at this point, I'm going to get a little bit more practical. So I am actually going to run Capture to show you what it looks like and how it works. Capture runs both on Windows and on Mac, so don't worry. The user interface looks basically identical on the Mac and on Windows. There's a few subtle changes, but I think anything I show you here would look basically the same on Windows. So the readability might be slightly awkward, but I think it will work anyway. Capture comes with 4 windows. You can see the interface is divided into 4 quadrants. And the bottom right quadrant is the place where we've tried to gather all information. So you have 3 spaces to work with to design in, and then there's a 4th isolated space with information, so you don't get stuff popping up on top of the rest of the interface. A typical working pattern would be picking stuff from the library and dragging them into the design. So what I'm going to do here is take 2 boxes and a cylinder. So I simply drag them into one of the views. So at this point, I'll talk briefly about the views. We've got 3 views that can actually do the same things. I could set them all to be top views. I could set them all to be 3D views. It's completely up to you depending on what you're doing and what you need at the moment. At the bottom right corner of the view, there's something we call the navigator. It gives you feedback on whether it's a top, front, section, or 3D view. And it also has 3 buttons. The first button is for the navigation, which allows you to quickly look around and change the view. The second button is the zoom. That one works pretty much the same, whether it's 3D or top. And finally, there's the button with all the options for the view. And as you can see, there's shortcuts for a number of things as well. I'll try to avoid using shortcuts so that you actually see what I'm doing. So now we've got 2 boxes and a cylinder in here. You can see it's a matter of clicking on them to select them. And when they're selected, there's like a red field highlighting around the box, and clicking anywhere inside allows me to move it around. So it's very easy to move things around. You can also select a number of objects at the same time by dragging over them with the mouse, like this. So now I have both the boxes and the cylinder selected, and I can move them all together. And there's a triangle thingy here appearing, and this is my rotation tool. So using the rotation anchor, as we call it, I can rotate the objects. I can also move the anchor, and you will see that the edge of the triangle is the point around which I'm rotating the objects. Now, if I wanted to create some kind of scenic environment out of this, one thing I could do is simply take one of the boxes and go to its properties. This means I will go to the Design tab down here, where there's an entry called Selected Items. This means that I'm now looking at the properties of this box. For instance, I can give it a name. I can change the dimensions. I can give it a color. I could also hook it up to a video and stuff like that. But at this point, I just want to create a stage floor. So I will make it 8 meters by 6 meters deep and 1 centimeter thick. So that's a very simple stage floor. I will also change one of the views to be a front view, so we see it from the side. Now you can see everything is sort of stashed along the center. So I'm going to take the boxes and snap them onto the floor, so they're actually on the floor and not halfway through to the basement. So if at any point you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. Yes? Shortcuts. Yeah. So the question is, do I need to use the green navigation buttons down at the corner of the view? And the answer is no. If you have a mouse with a middle button, then clicking with the middle button in the view allows you to quickly pan or rotate. And of course, you can also use the wheel of the mouse to zoom in and out. So you don't need that. If you have one of the fancy 3D joysticks, which are called the space navigators, you can use that as well. But beware, it's easy to get seasick in the beginning until you're used to the controls. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead with this simple design by adding a texture and a number of lights to see what that looks like. There's 2 ways of adding textures. Either you might have an image on your hard disk. Maybe you took a picture of the wall of the venue or the front of the building that you're playing with. Or you can use one of the textures that are available in the library. So I'll go to the library under Materials, and in this case, I'm simply going to take the old bricks texture and drop that on the box here. So I grab the texture, I hold it over the box, which turns purple to indicate that's where it's going to go, and I drop it, and nothing happens. So in order to see the materials and the lighting, we need to change the view from the mode that we call the CAD mode to the mode that we call the live mode. And now it goes kind of black because there's no lighting yet. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and turn up the ambient lighting of that view so we can actually see something even without the lights. So you can see I've managed to put some bricks on that box there. We have another box here which is forming the stage. So we could throw something else on that. So let's take shipboards, as in an old wooden stage floor, for instance. So that's how easy most things are in Capture. You take a gobo, you drag and drop it on a fixture. You take a filter, you put it on a fixture. You take a material, you throw it on an object. And once you get your head around that, we feel that most users find their way around the software without a lot of help. So really, it's an intuitive way of working. So at this point, I'd like to add some lighting. So again, I go to the library under the lighting fixtures, where, for the sake of political correctness, I'm going to use some elation fixtures. Maybe some LEDs. I wish I was more up to date with what these actually are. I'll start simple with the par can. It's easy. So I grab the par can and I drag and drop it in a view. So at this point you might say, well, how do you get it to hang in the air? And I say, I don't know. Because, sorry?
Air hooks.
Air hooks. Great idea. Siemens. So The answer is you could start with drawing all the trussing first, if you have fixed trussing, for instance, or you could just place all the lights, play around with them, see what you need, and care about the trussing at a later point. So once I have this fixture in here, then of course I want to turn it on. And the way to do that is by using the power button in the live view here, which brings up a simple control pane, which has handily a slider for light. That's very good, that's just what I want. So you can see the light coming on in the fixture. I'm going to maximize this a bit. Now I might want to focus this on my brick wall. And the way I do that is with the right mouse button of my mouse, simply by clicking on the box. Now this fixture might have, I'm hoping anyway, optional optics. This seems to be a rather narrow par spot. So I go back to the selected items page where we were before. And under fixture, under design and optics, unfortunately there seems to be no choices for this one, but if it was a generic parquet, you would find the CP62, CP61 options and things like that. So I'm going to throw in a zoom profile at this point, and I'm going to pick another brand for this. I always use, I'm sorry for that, ADB, because they're top of the list without scrolling. So I'm simply going to take something old, a neat hammer, and throw it in. Oh, sorry. So now you can see there's a number of additional options popping up because this is a profile. So you have the zoom ability, you have framing shutters, and if you throw in a gobo, you could rotate that as well. So as I turn this on, and I will move it slightly so you can see it better. You can see it has the zoom option. It has a focus control for the hardness, the edge of the beam, and also the framing shutters. So I could focus this on the box and adjust the framing shutters to cut out the edges of the box if I wanted, for instance. So this is very much the basics of how the software works. If I were to insert a moving light instead, which I might as well do, let's go to Elation again. Moving heads. I have a cheat sheet here. I'll take the platinum spot, 15R. Again, we have even more options available since it's a moving head, so I could change the gobo and the color of the fixture. Of course, if you're running this with emulation software or a lighting console, you might already have hooked that up at this point, and you would probably prefer programming the lights with the actual console so that as you find nice looks, you can record them right away. So if you remember what I talked about before, that it's a laborative tool that quickly allows you to see what happens when you move stuff. This is what we like to stress when we say it's a real-time lighting design software. So you can see as I move these fixtures, I see what happens immediately. So if there's a balcony getting in the way, creating shadow, or if the beam angle isn't good enough, you'll see that immediately, and you will see how far you need to move something to make stuff work. So that's one of the ways people use Capture, is for the actual lighting design. Now, there's a number of other ways to use Capture. You don't actually need to use Capture to design lighting with it. We have some users that make floor plans with it, simply to show the actors where there's going to be stuff they have to walk around. We have people that just put the fixtures in a line because all they want to check is if the patch is correct and it's working with the console. And we also have users that never really pre-program anything with it, but they still like to rig everything to get a feeling for how the room works, if you want to put it in an arty way. Because once you've worked in a room, in the virtual environment, you will find when you get to the real venue that your mind has already been there. You will be oriented even before you get to the real venue. And you will have a sense of what you can do in there that you might not have had if you hadn't played with it in advance. Now, of course, if you work in a fixed location every day, then there's no use for that because you will know the room by heart anyway. But if you're on tour or something like that, and there might already be a house drawing available, then import that in Capture, play around with it a bit. Your mind will work on it while you sleep, and the next day you will already be more prepared for the show than you would have been otherwise. So, another thing I mentioned was the paperwork. We've already placed 3 fixtures here, and if I were to ask somebody else to rig these, what I would like to do is send him some kind of drawing. And that we do by going to the plots and adding a new plot. And when I open that, it gives me a blank piece of paper. On this paper, I can easily insert a view. And as I zoom in here, you will see that we've put proper fixture symbols for the fixtures. So you are not seeing the wireframe solid construction. You're seeing an actual symbol as you might actually draw it by hand. If we zoom in even further, you also see that it's already put the degrees of the fixtures. So if these had optical choices, we would see that we need to change the optics or things like that. Now, we haven't done much more with the drawing yet, but if you do want to run it with the DMX console, then you would, of course, want to patch the fixtures somehow. And the easiest way to do that is by selecting a fixture and dragging it into a channel view. So this is my first DMX universe with 512 channels. And using the red arrow button here, I can simply drag a fixture and put it on a DMX channel. If I have a large number of fixtures, then I can select them all together. Oh, not that one, that one. In the order I want them patched, and drag them all together to the first channel. And since we had a moving head here as well, you see it uses more than 3 channels. And if I go back to the paperwork now, you also see that the patch information is there now. So if you add unit numbers, circuit numbers, if you put custom pieces of text, if you throw in filters, and if you patch these, all this information automatically pops up on the paperwork, which potentially saves you from doing double work if you would work in the paperwork package as well normally. So, at this point, I'm going to show you a little bit of how you can work with trusses in Capture. So I'm going to start all over from scratch and go back to the library where we have a section called truss with Jura truss, for instance. There's 2 ways you can work with truss in Capture. Either you can take one of the generic pieces of truss from the library. So I can take a 2-meter box section, and then I can say, hey, I want 12 meters. I don't care how it's done. You simply go into the properties to the pipe length and say 12 meters of truss. This, of course, means that Capture can't generate any report that says, well, you need 3 5-meter pieces and 1 of that, for instance. So if you want to draw trussing that can generate a report, then of course you need to pay attention to using the right pieces. So using box truss, let's see, DT34, I might have 1 2-meter piece, 1 2-meter piece, 1 3-meter, and maybe even a curved section, like that. I'm going to blow it up a bit. So what you really want now is to assemble these, and that's done using the snap. So I simply drag the truss, I hold it close to the other piece, it shows me in purple what's going to happen, and I release the mouse. Now what happens when I move this one here is that in addition it will also rotate it so that it fits correctly to that piece there. Now, maybe you noticed I took piece by piece from the library now. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is, if you know one piece is 2 meters, there's a function called clone, where I can say with a distance of 2 meters, I'd like 4 more. That's probably faster than dragging and dropping them one on one. Of course, there's also corners in the library. 3-way corner, for instance. And what happens as I drag and snap, as you can see, it's very quick to construct different kinds of truss structures. At this point, I've used both the generic truss and the DuraTruss pieces. So if I go to the reports, I create a new equipment report and open that. You will see it says, basically it lists all the pieces I've included in the design. So here you can see it says 12 meters of generic box truss. So if you needed the individual pieces, then that's no good. Yes?
What export functionality does it have? I saw export.
Yeah, so what export functionality does it have? It has a few different options. From inside the report here, if you export, you get an HTML file. That opens in all web browsers, and it also opens in Excel or in OpenOffice or whatever you might be using, which means you could do touch-ups to the spreadsheet information in there. The plots as such can be printed to PDF if you have a PDF printer installed. And the designs as such can also be exported to the DWG file format if you want to take it into another design package. All right, I'm going to progress now to the video and media stuff. And I'm going.
Excuse me, another
Yes,
question.
sure.
I saw your preview window is working for the textures, but unfortunately not for the trussing.
Yes, that is true. It's a good point.
Will you change that?
It's on the list to fix.
Thank you.
Yes, especially with some of the corners. If you don't know the codes by heart,
Yes, then
it's quite tricky to predict what you'll get.
Thank you.
Yes, good point. So here is a file that I've made like a true TV chef. I've made it before. And what I've got in here is a design which has projectors and LED panels. And I'm going to play back video from video files on my hard disk. So what you do in Capture is you add a number of video players to your project to represent a DVD player or a media server. I've added 3 of them here, called video player 1, 2, and 3. And these can now play back video files from the hard disk. So what we have here is we have 2 projectors up here, projecting on the Porsche and on the box. Then we have 4 projectors that are projecting on, oh, that was difficult to show you, I'll do this. So we have 2 semi-transparent surfaces here with a back projection from 4 projectors in the back. And additionally, we have 2 assemblies of LED tiles. So you can see how Capture visualizes the video projections, both as traditionals, as back projections, and on the LED tiles. And if we zoom in on the LED tiles, you will also see that the pixel pitch is visualized. Now, these are very dense panels. But if I insert another panel, which I will do, so I go to the library, under Media Fixtures, which is where we have all the pixel panels. I'm going to pick an Elation one. And it's going to be the EV LED 256. Sorry for that. There we go. So I drag and drop one panel. I happen to know that this one is 0.6 by 0.6 meters large, and I want to create a bigger display. So I use the clone tool that I showed you before and say that with a 0.6 meter distance, I'd like 7 more. So we've created the row. Now I will clone that row in another direction, upwards, by 5. Which means we've now created, oops, sorry, making mistakes. There it is. Yeah, so here is our assembly of LED panels now. In order to get some video on it, what I need to do is attach a material. So I'm simply going to hijack one of the video materials I already have, and I will drag and drop it onto the LED panels like this. And when I go back to live mode, you can see all the panels are now playing video. The problem is every panel is now showing by itself the entire video, which is probably not what you want. So to solve that, we need to actually map the video onto these panels. And for that, we have a function called material mapping, which allows you to move the material over the surface. The first thing I will do is use a function called map2extents, which simply wraps the video to the size of the thing you're working with. So at this point, I've automatically fitted the video around all of the LED tiles. And as you can see now, since this has a much higher pixel pitch, you can see the difference between the different LED tiles as well. So one of the things you could do now also, apart from playing with how you position the video, is also break up these panels again, because you might have a different arrangement like this. So really, you can take any image or video, because you might just have a still image from the video, and put it on a box on LED panels or throw it in a video projector and simulate, visualize basically any kind of media setup you might have. All right, I think I'm reaching the end of my allotted time. And I've basically shown you all I wanted to show you. So I'll ask if there's any questions at this point. Let's get the mic down there.
When I'm using it to program a light show, I would like to make it my 3D fencer big and lock it. So when I click on an object, it won't get selected. Is it possible?
Yes. There is, if you work with layers, which I've done in this project, so I've created a number of different layers for different things, which is why there are some purple stuff, some white stuff, and yellow stuff. What you can do is you can lock a layer. And what you can do in addition is if you go into the options, there is something called locked layers unselectable. And if you enable that, any locked layers becomes completely untouchable. Is that an answer to the question?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Perfect. Great.
Can you visualize effects with your lamps? Maybe a chase or a move with your moving head?
Yes, absolutely. So any DMX that comes into capture immediately triggers the fixtures to do what the DMX tells them to do. So if you're running a ballyhoo or a circle effect or anything, that is displayed immediately in capture as you do it on the lighting console.
Yeah, if I select a picture, I automatically it generates the DMX channels I need. So I take a moving head for some use. I get 16 DMX channels from that moving head, but does there get any additional information about that lamp? The weight?
All right, so let's take a look here. In the second tab down here, which is called fixtures, there is a list of all the fixtures in the design. Here you can see some of the information available. like the DMX modes, the optics, but also the weight. And if we go into the design and selected items, we can see some additional things here, I think. Yeah, there's actually not much more to see, but yes, there is some additional information, and you can see the channel names as well.
Yeah, okay, so if I'm making a rigging report, then I exactly know what the weight is of my my lens and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so there's a few different things you can do there. One thing you can do is whenever you select something, there's a button here that quickly gives you a summary of what you've selected, which also includes the weight. So, and there's a few other options as well. Yes?
Is it possible to map the video on the objects?
Yeah, so
Just only on the objects?
yeah, so what I showed you before was I took the video and I put it on the LED panels. But let's take the box here, for instance, and move it out of the projection. So here I have a box which is just gray at the moment. What I can do is take one of the materials, which is hooked up to one of the video players, and drag and drop that material onto the box. So you can see the video is now on the box, but it's wrapped around the box in an automatic fashion. But if I go into the material mapping mode, you can see this little white thing here, which represents the actual video in its full size, and I can stretch it out and place it on this box any way I need it to do. And now you can see the video sort of going through the box instead, because it's a projection on the box. Does that answer the question?
Can you map it on the car?
Sure. So I'll just kill the projectors here because it's creating a lot of distraction. So here is the car. Again, I take the material, I drop it on the car. Now, here's a bonus added actually. If you have an object that is drawn in another software, there may already have been a material mapping on that object in that software. And that is transported into Capture as well, which means you could change the material on a complex object and still have it look good in a way. But again, I have the material on the Porsche. I can go into the material mapping mode, stretch it out over the car, like this. I can also rotate the material in full 3D. So I can go into the section view and say, I want the material sort of top down on the car rather than from the front. So I can easily do that and stretch it out to fit the car like that.
Thank you.
Great. All right, I think there's one more question down there.
Can I easily expand your library with my CAD library, for example?
Yes and no. You can easily import any CAD file into Capture, but there is no user library in that sense yet. It's something we're working on. But you can easily add or import an object into your design at any point, yes.
But it's not safe then. After importing for the first time, it's not in the library then?
No, it's not in the library. It's only in the design where you added it, yes.
Thanks.
Right. Good question.
And other questions?
When will the library actually be open to importing files into the library instead of just into the drawing?
We don't have a set date for that yet. I would guess with a probability of about 70–80% for the release, which is timed for Frankfurt show next year, which is around April.
So that's quite.
That's what I believe
quick,
at the moment, yes.
Okay.
Because
so it's not 5 years or so.
No, it's a very commonly requested feature actually, so
Okay.
it's something we feel is important.
Thanks.
Yes. All right. Right, one or possibly two more questions.
Is it possible to adjust the camera settings?
Yes, there's a number of different options for the cameras. Each view has its own camera. You can also see the camera, like here for instance, this is the camera of the beta view here, which means I can also move the camera manually in another view and see what happens. And the view itself also has settings like the field of view for the camera. You can also force it to have an aspect ratio. So if you're in TV, for instance, all right, that came out very weird. Yeah, so now I've forced this view to be in a 16:9 ratio, so it's also graying out the parts that wouldn't be there. So there's a few different options for the cameras, yes. You can also patch them to DMX and move the cameras from the lighting console as well. Right. Final
Most
question.
important question, what's roughly the price?
And I will pass that directly to Elation.
The price is nearly nothing.
Oh, excellent. So thanks very much for your time, and hope to chat with you later today as well, as I'll be around. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lars. Thanks for coming over and spending some time with us. And it's been a great pleasure, as I said.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.